Dust rolled over the ruins like smoke from an invisible fire. The sky above Clear 9 was a flat shade of rust, where sunlight tried to cut through but only made the haze sharper. Captain Aaron Holt stood on the roof of a half-buried command post and watched machines move across the desert. The enemy lines looked endless. Gun towers and crawler tanks stretched to the horizon, forming a steady, silent tide. He pressed a finger to the small receiver in his ear. Static hissed. Then the cracked voice of a radio tech came through. "Captain, fleet movement confirmed. Empire ships entering low orbit, heavy class?" Holt lowered his hand and said nothing. For a moment he stared at the scar that ran across his wrist, a reminder from the battle 3 months ago, the one that cost him his rank and most of his men. People still laughed about it across the Empire channels. They showed his face next to words like coward and failure. Inside the bunker, soldiers were waiting. Some leaned against metal walls, their helmets in their laps. Others patched armor with glue and wiring, turning broken gear into something usable for one more fight. The air smelled like oil and burnt soil. The sound of welding filled the gaps between words. Lieutenant Nora Keene looked up from a map spread across a rusted table. "If they hit us from orbit again, we won't hold long," she said. "They will hit," Holt replied. "That's certain. Then we're dead." He studied the map. Not yet. Outside, the wind picked up, tossing grit in every direction. When the first blast hit the outer ridge, the entire bunker shook. Ceiling dust fell into the dim lights. Men rose from their seats and ran to stations, voices sharp but controlled. Holt moved through them, giving orders in a low, steady voice. "Bring the turret grid online. Reinforce the east wall. No one leaves the base perimeter." The second blast came closer. Steel groaned. The sound of distant ships roared like thunder. A line of crawler tanks crested the horizon, glowing red from the heat of entry. Keene shouted for everyone to get down. The air outside tore open with streaking fire. When Holt came up again, he saw the first line of defenses burning. A squad tried to retreat, but the dust swallowed them. The enemy moved closer, their guns bright blue in the dark smoke. Every few seconds a missile screamed overhead. The ground trembled, as if the planet itself wanted the fight to end. Inside, the comms room blinked alive. A holographic screen flickered and built the image of Commander Ryden, standing somewhere safe above the clouds in his black uniform. His voice carried across every open frequency. "Captain Holt," Ryden said with a smirk. "You are still standing. Admirable, considering how many times you've fallen." Holt didn't answer. His men watched the screen, faces tight with anger. Ryden continued, "The Empire remembers its failures, Holt, especially the loud ones. After Vega Station, you should have disappeared. Yet here you are, dragging your name through the mud again." Static cut his words for a moment, then the image cleared. "The entire outer sector is watching. When your defense breaks, make sure you smile for the cameras." The screen faded to black. Keene cursed under her breath. A shell hit close. The bunker lights dimmed and came back. Holt straightened his jacket and walked toward the ladder that led to the surface. Sir Keene called. "Where are you going?" "To watch the show they think they're directing," he said. He climbed out into the storm. The wind tore at his coat. Above him, enemy cruisers were lining up in the clouds, shadows moving across a blood-red sky. The ground trembled again, loud and steady, a rhythm building toward something massive. He took out his field radio, tuned to the Empire broadcast frequency, and pressed the send key. "Let them come," he said. Far overhead, the first ship began to descend. Its engines lit the sky white. For the briefest moment, before the sound reached him, Holt thought he saw something else. A faint second flare behind the enemy fleet, like a shadow moving against the stars. Then the roar hit, and the sky fell. Smoke crawled along the trenches like a living thing. Every breath tasted of iron. Captain Aaron Holt moved through the lines, helmet off, face streaked with soot. The bombardment had lasted through the night, turning half of Clara 9 into glowing rubble. The enemy guns were still firing beyond the hills, turning the air into a deep, vibrating hum that never stopped. The base was a maze of broken steel. Men and women moved like ghosts between craters. Some carried the wounded. Others hauled ammo boxes to what was left of the defense wall. Static cracked in every ear radio. Someone's voice shouted across the channel, "We've lost the South Trench." Repeat, "The South Trench is gone." Holt stopped beside a burned carrier vehicle and peered over the ridge. Through the dust and fire, he saw the approaching line of Empire machines. Wide frames, 8 legs each, walking slow and steady. Their armor reflected the flames. Soldiers around him froze. "Dread armor," someone whispered. Holt raised his rifle and fired 2 rounds. The bullets sparked harmlessly against the armor's front plate. He lowered the gun. "They'll fall into the tunnels," he said. "They have to." "Keen, are your triggers set?" Inside the command shaft below, Nora Keen knelt over a row of detonators wired into a crude network. Sweat dripped into the dust under her mask. "Charges are ready, Captain. But if we blow them too soon, we lose our own shelter. We'll lose everything anyway," Holt said. "Wait for my mark." Another explosion thundered across the base. The dread armor fired rail cannons that tore entire defense towers in half. White light filled the sky. Holt watched one soldier vaporized mid-run, leaving a smoking shadow on the ground. He clenched his jaw. The first dread armor reached the edge of the trenches. Its legs sank deep into the loose dirt. The massive machine paused, scanning the ground with a blue beam that swept back and forth. "Wait," Holt said again, voice steady. The other war machines closed in, their steps sinking into a heavy rhythm. Beneath them, tunnels ran like veins under the planet's crust, filled with wires, explosives, and hidden hope. The Empire commander's voice echoed from every comm screen nearby. "Captain Holt," Raiden said, calm and smiling, "still fighting to be remembered. You'll find only silence down there." Holt didn't reply. He waited until the 5th machine came over the ridge. Then he raised a flare pistol and fired into the air. Keen hit the detonator. The world dropped. The ridge collapsed like wet paper, and the dread armor fell through it into fire. The chain reaction tore through the entire hillside. Metal shrieked, explosions rolled in waves, and shockwaves flattened sandbags and people alike. Holt fell on his back, ears ringing. Just one machine remained standing, half melted, firing blindly before collapsing into the pit where its brothers burned. Silence hit after the storm, not peace, but the kind that feels like the world waiting to decide who still lives. Then the first cries came from the left trench. "They made it. They're running." She looked at Holt and tried to speak, but nothing came out. He just nodded. The victory felt like a wound. They had stopped the armor, but now nothing moved on the scanners. The Empire had gone dark. The horizon glowed, but not from battle. The enemy guns had gone silent by choice. Then a faint hum rose in the air, steady and rising. Soldiers looked up. From the direction of the horizon, small black dots appeared, growing larger by the second. Dropships, dozens of them, cutting through the clouds. The largest ship opened a wide broadcast screen on its hull. Commander Raiden's smirking face filled it again. "Good trick, Captain," he said through the static, "but this is where the comedy ends." Holt turned to Keen. "Ground shields up, now." The screen blinked, and Raiden's face hardened. "Goodbye, hero." Light flooded the field. Every sensor screamed. The ground began to shake again, harder than before. Holt stared at the sky, teeth clenched so tight they drew blood. Then the entire command bunker behind him vanished in one flash, and the desert turned white. The ground kept shaking long after the light faded. Everything was smoke and roaring heat. Captain Aaron Holt pushed himself up from the dirt, half blind from the blast. His armor was cracked, his ear receiver gone. Around him, metal frames twisted and burned. The command bunker was gone, buried under a glowing crater. The air felt thick, hot, hard to pull in. Bodies were scattered across the slope. Some still moved, some didn't. The sky was just red haze and falling ash. Holt tore a bandage from his pack and pressed it to a bleeding line on his side. He looked for movement and spotted Nora Keen dragging 2 survivors behind wreckage. One of the men was missing his arm, the other barely breathing. Holt stumbled to her side. "Anyone alive in the lower trench?" he asked. Keen's voice was rough. No answer. "Everyone's off the grid." He looked at the ruined antennas on the ridge. Nothing above them worked. Communication with orbit was gone. Their only power generator was a burned-out shell, so they blinded us, Holt said. "Fine, then we fight blind." He forced himself to his feet and waved to a handful of soldiers crawling out of cover. "Form up. If you can shoot, you fight. If you can move, you carry." We build the cum relay by hand. They worked through the wreckage, pulling together cables, signal lights, and metal plates. Without main power, they couldn't reach any Allied channels. Keen's hands shook while she rewired an old field transmitter. "This rig is 20 years old," she said. "Good," Holt replied. "Old code still works when nothing else does." They built a rough network of analog beacons short range, flare-driven, nothing digital. Each team fanned out to place them around the ridges. The Empire used scanning drones that hunted any active signals. But Holt's system didn't transmit it reflected light and heat. Primitive, but invisible. That afternoon, the enemy guns started again. Only this time, their fire was scattered. Without digital locks, they couldn't aim right. Blasts missed by hundreds of yards. "See that?" Holt said, pointing as shells landed in the empty plain. "Their machines can't predict ghosts." Night came. Fires never went out. Soldiers gathered behind broken walls, too tired to speak. Keen sat beside Holt, covered in dust. She held a data chip between her fingers. "It's a recording," she said quietly. "The last message from Davis, before the bunkers went down." Holt took it, but didn't play it. He deserves better than what's left of this place. A tremor rolled through the sand. Distant engines rumbled beyond the ridge. Holt raised his binoculars. He saw the dark shapes of Imperial transports moving closer, headlights fading through smoke. He counted at least 20. "They're coming without scanners now," Keen said. Emmanuel ground assault. "They expect us to break," Holt replied. He opened his pack and pulled out a small steel box no bigger than his hand. Inside was an old transmitter and marked, unregistered, long ago removed from official use. Keen frowned. "What is that?" "Last relic from the fleet. A whisper channel. I think it's lost." He connected the crystal chip, tuned the switch, and stared out into the red fog. "When signal fails, use this." Only one frequency. Static filled his helmet speaker, then cleared. Silence. Only wind. He spoke one word into the mic. "Now." The device beeped, a single green light flashing once before burning out. Dead, the signal sent to nowhere. Keen watched him. "What did you call?" "Someone who still owes me," he said. Then the night lit again, not from the ground or enemy fire. High above the haze, a soft glow spread across the upper clouds like a slow sunrise in reverse. Every soldier lifted their head. Holt looked up too, afraid to blink. Through the smoke, one voice came faint and broken across the comm. Transmission received. Holt exhaled once. They heard it. The next tremor wasn't from the Empire at all. The ground shook like a drum. Every loose stone danced in the dirt. Captain Aaron Holt stood at the edge of the trench and watched the night sky split. A pale glow widened over the clouds, and something heavy moved behind it. The sound came next, deep and steady, like the sea breaking through steel walls. Soldiers ducked behind wrecks, unsure what they were seeing. Keen pointed upward. "Is that them?" Holt didn't answer. The light grew until it filled the whole horizon. Then the shapes appeared, dark holes gliding through the upper atmosphere. No engines visible, no beacons flashing. They looked almost dead until their sides caught the firelight from the ground. And then everyone knew. "The Ghost Fleet," Holt said under his breath. The first strike hit without warning. A streak of blue fire cut across the sky and dropped into the enemy landing zone. A heartbeat later, the world erupted. A shockwave threw men to the ground. Empire transports flipped like toys, their burning pieces raining down over the desert. Holt shielded his eyes. For one long second, the red haze of Clyra 9 turned white. "Move," Holt shouted. "Regroup now. This is our window." All across the line, his soldiers stood again. The Empire troops faltered, confused by the sudden orbital barrage. Their comms screamed with alarm signals. Holt's men took advantage. They fired everything. Rockets, rifles, mortars. The air became a storm of flashes and noise. Keen ran beside Holt, calling in coordinates by hand signal. "Fleet is hitting hard, Captain. They're breaking the blockade." "They're not aiming at the blockade," he said. "They're clearing a path." Above them, more ships broke through the smoke curtain and dove lower. Each one wore the same old insignia, black wings, unworn silver plating. The same mark Holt had sworn to as a younger man, before the Empire buried it. The lost fleet of the Republic. Battered, forgotten, but not dead. He toggled his broadcast link. Static hissed, then cleared. To all units, he said, the sky belongs to us again. Push forward. The voice of Commander Raiden came across the Empire channel in a sharp burst. This is impossible. Those ships were destroyed. Holt smiled faintly. Guess your reports were wrong. The entire Eastern Front lit up as the Ghost Fleet released another volley. The ground boiled with explosions. Enemy tanks folded. Walker units turned to molten junk. Holt's soldiers advanced through the dust, yelling as they fired. They had been broken hours before, but now they moved like a new army. A drop pod hit the dirt nearby, door springing open. Ghost Fleet Marine stepped out, helmet cracked, gear scorched. He looked around the burning field and spotted Holt. We tracked your signal, sir, the Marine shouted. We thought the transmission was a trap. Not a trap, Holt said. A promise. They clasped hands amid the chaos. Stray gunfire hit around them, throwing sparks from the rubble. Keen ducked as a shell burst nearby, shattering what remained of the south wall. Captain, she shouted, the Empire command cruiser is retreating to orbit. They're pulling back their ground forces. They think they can reroute, Holt said. We're not giving them time. The victory felt close, but he knew it wasn't over. The Empire still held orbital control through one flagship. If they regrouped, everything could turn again. Holt opened an open frequency channel, his voice steady, despite the noise and fire. All units, he said. Prepare for atmospheric breach operations. We're taking the fight upstairs. Keen stared at him. You're going after their command ship? I'll never make it. Holt checked his weapon and looked up at the sky, where fire trails from the Ghost Fleet still painted the clouds. They mocked this field, a time they see what's left of their joke. He switched the channel to the Empire feed, loud and clear for every camera still working. This is Captain Holt, he said. Backup's here. The line went silent for a moment, then filled with panicked Imperial voices. Above Clyra 9, one massive shadow began to move. The Empire's flagship turned its cannons toward the surface, power building across its hull. The glow was unbearable, like a new sun rising. Every soldier on the ground stopped and looked up. Keen's voice cracked through the radio. Captain, it's charging planetary fire. Holt watched the sky pulse brighter and said quietly, They won't get the chance. Then the light began to fall. The sky came apart in front of them. A white beam dropped from orbit toward the surface, tearing a line of fire through the air. Captain Aaron Holt stared at it and knew what it was. The Empire's flagship, the Zenith Crown, had activated its full planetary weapon. One burst could turn Clyra 9 into glass. Holt snapped his radio on. Keen, get every remaining ship off the ground. Tell the Ghost Fleet to aim their guns on that flagship before it finishes its charge. Keen's voice cracked through static. I'll never hit it in time. Then I'll go up there myself. Hello, he ran toward a waiting gunship still spinning its rear engines. Two soldiers moved to stop him, but he waved them off. Hold the line, he ordered. If I don't come back, finish it from down here. The dropship's ramp closed behind him. Inside, the walls rattled as the engines pulled the craft into the slipstream. Flames rushed along the cockpit windows. The sky outside turned from red to black. The Ghost Fleet cruisers passed beneath him, trading fire with the Empire guns. Their weapon trails flashed across the night like lightning on steel. Approach vector locked, the pilot said. Will impact in 60 seconds. The hull won't survive re-entry if you're wrong about this. I'm often wrong, Holt said. Keep the engines hot. The Zenith Crown grew larger with every second. It filled half the windshield by the time they broke orbit. The ship looked more like a floating city than a war vessel. Bright hangar lights dotted its underbelly, thousands of tiny fires moving along its metal skin. At the heart of the ship, a blue core burned with rising light. Target reactor room, Holt said. Manual breach. The pilot nodded once. The dropship slammed through the side of the flagship. Alarms screamed. Metal panels tore away. Holt jumped from the ramp as the ship broke apart behind him. He hit the deck hard and rolled through smoke. A flash flood of red sirens washed through the corridor. He pushed himself up and steadied his rifle. The walls were shaking from the energy build inside the reactor. Armed crew rushed around the corner. Holt fired, the shots echoing through narrow halls. Flames burst from a pipe above his head. He moved forward through the chaos. The sound of the core was deafening now. Power conduits shook the floor under his boots. Ahead, he spotted the command chamber. Commander Raiden stood there, his uniform torn, pistol in hand, the glow of the reactor behind him. "You never know when to quit," Raiden shouted. "Neither do the people you buried," Holt said. Raiden fired. The bullet grazed Holt's shoulder. Holt slammed into him, both men crashing against a wall of broken glass. Raiden fought back, grabbed a fallen wrench, and swung. Holt caught his arm and drove him backward into a sparking console. A jolt sent a flash through the room. Raiden's body went rigid and collapsed, eyes wide, hands smoking. Holt staggered to the control panel. Code streamed across the display. The reactor was seconds from discharge. "Keen," he said into his radio. "Do you copy?" Static filled the line. He switched frequencies until he found her voice. "Captain, the weapon's still charging. We can see it from the ground." "Not for long," he said. He keyed in the override for the main engine array, rerouting the power upward. "When this triggers, shield your people. The blast won't be aimed at you." She shouted something, but the signal broke away. The control board in front of him started to melt. The whole room filled with blue light. Holt dragged Raiden's body aside and forced open the emergency valve. The Zenith Crown's engines reversed course, kicking upward toward the void. A massive surge tore through the hull. From the surface, it looked like the sky folding in on itself, a bright circle widening until it faded into clean air. Keen watched it burn out. Then silence covered the planet. Ports came hours later. Clyra 9 was safe. The Empire's fleet was gone. The Ghost fleet held orbit but couldn't find any signal from the flagship wreck. No trace of Holt. In the mess tents, soldiers spoke of what they saw. One man standing on the bridge, pulling a dying warship toward the stars. They said his voice came through the static for one last message. "Humanity's not finished yet." Then all channels went dark.